So this is Shift. This is the podcast where we talk about radical vulnerability and accountability, and we challenge people to shift their paradigms. So today we're going to get right into what's a relatively heavy topic and maybe one that a lot of you listening might be uncomfortable with, but I'm excited to have the conversation. I think it's an important one to have. And so with me today is Cole Forrester, who is the founder of True Radical Love, which is an organization that is working towards ending pornography and helping men and women realize the damages that pornography does and why it's detrimental to yourself, to your relationship, to your walk with Christ, if that's part of your journey. So yeah, man, I'm excited to have you here. I appreciate you being here. I'm grateful for my son introducing us. I think that's a really cool connection when I reached out and was looking for the right folks. So yeah, let's kick it off, man. Tell me who you are, how you landed at True Radical Love, or what made you start that organization, and
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, and it is funny how it works together. And you do have an amazing son, and I love that he thought of us, right when you were looking forward. And yeah, when we met and had our, I guess our first call or just a prep call a while back, just seeing a lot of just very similarities in what we're doing,
yeah,
and
for sure.
it is just a great topic to talk about. And so yeah, we started it through COVID. So my full-time career is as a family financial planner, as well as like business strategist for other businesses. And business was good, and it took a little bit of shift. Obviously, the whole economy really did. And so my wife and I really just had a little bit of extra time, a little bit extra area, and then giving. We like to give to certain nonprofits, and um, we thought, we could start putting some money towards our own cause, something that we felt very passionate about. So it really started years ago of my story. And I grew up through a Christian household, and pornography was something that was really hidden to me. I watched it, and I felt a lot of shame, I never really even felt about maybe not watching it. It just was something that I did. And it just really got worse through college. Um, and then it got pretty bad early 20s. But then I remember around in my early 20s, my friend shared an article, and me reading that one article that correlated trafficking with pornography. I had to decide then. I had to then say, okay, am I going to support this now that I know, or am I going to stand against it? And so that was just, and that it was easy but hard. It's an easy decision to make, or it's easy decision to make, but a hard journey ahead. And but it gets easier, and at the same time, it's still a journey. Once someone combats pornography in their own heart, there's still a lot of other things you start realizing that you were doing. Maybe you didn't realize before, but once you get the most obvious thing away that you knew was bad, you start realizing other things that you were doing. So it just led to, just a I felt very lost. I felt very depressed, and had a really, had a relationship that didn't go well. And all that really led me to my wife. And when I met her, I really thought about what I wanted. I wanted my eyes just for her. I wanted all my attraction to be only for her and for no one else. And that's not what the world wants. The world wants me to want everything else. And
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
yeah, I mean, that's kind of how it got started. And my wife's really passionate about anti-trafficking. And so, yeah, just was a really cool combination of things.
That's awesome. So were you with your wife when you decided to stop watching porn? Was that a conversation you and her had to have, or were you already kind of past that?
That's a great question. So that was probably 5 years before we met. However, I still had issues for those 5 years, even though pornography itself, the websites were gone. I still thought about people very lustfully. I still had it. I still had pornography in me. It just wasn't, I wasn't supporting the mainstream pornography. So I wasn't
Right.
going to trafficking, which it wasn't true to my heart. I was actually really hurting myself, hurting others. Um, Trying to think of the shift when I really switched from that. I mean, really after that relationship failed, I met my wife. We just really leaned into our emotional and spiritual intimacy, and we didn't want it to be about what the world wants it to be about. And but she did ask me once, and it was awesome. And I'll share that as a story. Be expected to answer when someone asks. If your spouse that you love or you would to marry, I hope they ask. You should hope that your spouse wants to know that, versus
Yeah.
just assuming it, or versus just letting you do it. And it was an exciting moment for me to tell her, like, oh my gosh, like, not only do I not watch it, I am so against pornography. Like, it's not even funny. And she'll tell the story where she says, right after I said that, she goes, oh, great. I'm now dating a liar. So,
Oh,
which is sad to think. Women nowadays are believe that every man just watches porn. Cause you know why? Because that's what men tell them. That's
yeah.
what girlfriends say when they say, oh, my boyfriend's watching porn. Oh yeah, you just found out? Yeah, mine does too. It's like this
Yeah.
normal thing that women now have to that they now have to accept, in quotations.
Yeah. We sort of perpetuate that, like, it's boys will be boys, right? Like that's just what they do. And it's interesting. I feel like this conversation is really hard for so many people because, you know, especially in America, we have this really unhealthy, you know, dialogue about sex. Like,
Mhm.
you know, and I don't know where it started or how or what the Puritan views that like fuel that come from. Like, I really don't know. I'm fascinated by it because, we've got a lot of kids. I think you guys, do you have kids yet? Are you
No,
guys?
not yet.
Yeah. So like we're kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. Like I got 8 children. I got a 23-year-old daughter. I got a 3-year-old daughter. In our house, like when I had a vasectomy, we had like open conversations at the dinner table about like what does that mean? What does that look like? And not to like be, you know, inappropriate, but
Yeah.
it's like my kids need to understand. I believe that our kids need to understand like what's happening and how we're not going to have any more kids. And it's not because mom and I don't love each other. It's because we're going to make, this is how the biology of it works. And, you know, sometimes I'll share that with friends of ours, or we talk about the conversations we have, and they're sort of like in shock that we would have open conversations about that stuff. And I'm like, if we have open conversations about everything, then a lot of this stuff doesn't become a stigma, right? Like watching pornography, like it's so, and I hear a lot of people too, they'll come to me and they'll say, well, sex is normal. And I'm like, absolutely, 100%. Like my wife and I have a great, intimate, healthy, you know, relationship with one another, but that doesn't require pornography. And the idea that like porn and sex are synonymous is part of the problem. Like we can have healthy relationships without that. And I think the more that we start to have conversations around it without shame and being honest with each other is going to be super helpful. So like, yeah, it's interesting that you say that your wife thought, well, I'm dating a liar. I'm talking to a liar because like the idea that not watching porn is so abnormal that you just
Yeah.
must be lying about it is a real problem.
Yeah.
But
And I think someone said this quote really hit them hard. So I guess it was good. It's just something I thought, but that sounded really lame. Something I thought.
no,
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 but it's just like it's I was thinking, today I might not be part of the 1% of guys financially. I might not be part of the 1% fitness club, the Instagram body that some dudes got. Might not be part of the 1% of intelligence, but I could for sure be part of the 1% of men that don't watch porn. If that's a sliver of a unique type of man I could be, I wonder if I start there. And
that's good.
I wanted to have a shirt, and again, I don't want to riff on this quote, but it's like I got 99 problems and porn ain't one. We still
Yeah.
still have a ton of problems, but we could at least make porn not one. And you brought up a lot of conversations about parenting, which we could go down a rabbit hole with too. And there's actually so much importance for your kids to know, to have these conversations, for it to not be there's other things of conversation about things being anatomically correct and things like that, just due to the fact that if your child was ever sexually abused and
Yeah.
they would have to go through that system. So but yes, I think nowadays with the advancement of technology, we're living at a time right now where the ability for humans to adapt to how quickly the world is changing has now it's surpassed. If I were to draw this graph, we have surpassed the ability for us to adapt to how quickly the world changes through social media, through technology. We we cannot environmentally prevent our children from these things. They will see it. Guaranteed 100%. Every child will probably be exposed to pornography, will be shown by a friend, maybe we'll go to see it. And so, where are they going to go after? Are they going to go to you as a parent with that open ability for conversation? Um, one of our young guys in the group shared that if parents viewed their children as getting bit by porn, things could be a lot better. Meaning, if your kid got bit by a dog, you wouldn't blame your kid. You would be very upset about this dog that bit your child, and you protect your child. So, porn is out there trying to bite our kids, and it's we should love our children and be so accepting to them. And it's always, in the sales world, always how we reactively respond right away. Are we reacting in anger or love for them?
Yeah, that's great. I love that. First of all, you make the shirt and I'll buy it because I love that. I think it's a great riff on that, and it's funny because I'm thinking like, so I quit drinking, I quit smoking. Like, there's a guy, like, I'm down to like 97 problems, so we're getting there. We're getting one step at a time. But I think there's so much truth in that. Like, we don't, people look at addictions as this choice that people have made, like, and I remember, I mean, I've not participated in pornography for a long time, and I still, like, I think like anyone, catch myself going, oh, that's not appropriate, or that's not really healthy, right? Because it's not what we would call porn. But I mean, just like scrolling through Instagram reels lately, I've noticed young children dancing with their parents in ways that I was like, man, if I caught my 6-year-old like that, we'd have to have a conversation. And we do, actually. My daughter has this dress that she likes, and she tied it up real tight so it was real form fitting, and it got a little bit shorter. And she came to me the other day and said, Daddy, do you like my dress? And I said, no, I don't. And that hurt her feelings at first. I said, but let me explain to you why. Let me explain to you why I don't feel like that's appropriate for you at this stage and this season. It's not that you're not beautiful, it's not that you're not, but like, what is that drawing in? Like, what is the intention of that? And she doesn't know, because she's something that she saw, on TV, or, someone else. I mean, even I don't know, like, Nickelodeon's back, right? And they have this new version of the show, All That, which when I was a kid, All That was like cool, right? Like, it was like this little sketch comedy show, and probably dating myself here, but now it's back, and it's got like musical guests who are like rappers, and they're singing songs, and I'm like,
Oh,
that's not really good for my 7-year-old or my 9-year-old to be seeing. But we've normalized it in such a way that, like, it is a thing that you have to have these super open conversations about, or they do get bent. But we seem to have this thing where, like, we consider the challenge that our kids go through, like, they're not, I don't know, man. It's this weird balance between like being exposed to things that they shouldn't be exposed to, but we almost blame them for having a reaction to something, right?
yeah.
Like,
It's definitely the gap in generation. It's a generational gap issue that we have. And that's where, when teachers think about this topic, if we were to say, hey, we want to give a talk to your kids in school about pornography, they'd be, oh my gosh, you guys want to talk about that? It's like we're not living in the Playboy mags anymore. Like, it's literally
yeah,
on the phone. They're probably watching it whenever they can. Like, it's, and maybe that's overly extreme, but it's there. And like you're saying, that was another thing that led to our cause. It wasn't even the fact that pornography has been so bad, which it is. It's just, it's a lot of women don't understand how bad pornography is. And now there are a lot of women that do struggle with pornography, but a lot of women that don't, that have a husband that struggle with it, they don't get how really bad it is and how dark and scary that world is. I mean, and I want guys need to sometimes sit there and understand that. They need to really almost therapeutically understand, what am I watching? They really thought about it. They really, gosh, even journaled about what is this? What
yeah,
could this do to me? It doesn't make that person doing that, heinous sex crime a monster anymore. You see them just, wow, that's someone that went unchecked. And you're right. The society wants to sell that to our kids, and part of True Radical Love, and just so the audience knows, we're an educational based nonprofit. We want to sell our cause through testimonies and through facts. And the founders, myself, my wife, and the other in our team that helps us, we all have Christian values, meaning, and we believe that Christian values are a really framework of society, of morality. And people could argue that, and that's fine. But I believe we can have a common conversation about what's good and bad without it having the church jargon. But you're right. I mean, we want to,
Right.
we do want to be set apart where we're not trying to promote, good sex for a kid, like for young, like that's not, no, we believe in, we believe
Yeah.
in the ultimate good. We believe in, teaching our, I don't know perfectly know how to teach our kids down the road when we have kids, but I think we want to sell them how good sex is and the fact that it's made for marriage, not, the whole, you might get STD or you might get a baby doesn't prevent kids from doing it. So,
Yeah.
it is a beautiful thing, but it is honored there. And, yeah. And I think kids appreciate the truth, and the fear tactics. I just don't think they can work anymore. We live in too much of an information sharing society. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, because the fear tactics are still used, from the top down in so many ways, and it's never worked. I mean, you know, I remember Say No to Drugs and the Dare program and all the things that, when I was in junior high and high school, and, even, I mean, just all the way through to today, it's like we aren't, like, kids aren't stupid, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
they're we they're so much smarter than we give them credit for. And so I think those conversations are super important to have. But you touched on something, that I kind of want to unpack a little bit, because, I think we can definitely have the conversation around, you know, right, wrong, good, bad, without having to tie it together to the church. I mean, I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
I believe that it's a really good choice for people to make. I think it's, something that I talk about, often. Um, and one of the big challenges of a lot of the anti-pornography movement, or organizations that are within that movement, is that there are a growing number of non-Christians or non-Jesus followers in our society. And that's a whole separate conversation. But it's like, I want to be able to still have the conversation of how pornography outside of that Christian dynamic is
Yeah.
damaging to relationships, is damaging to husbands and wives, or men and women. And so I love that it's like education based, because I think that's really, really important. Because if we're basing the argument on our faith, then, a lot
Well,
of
that's,
times it just shuts people out, and they're not even willing to talk about it, right?
yeah. I mean, and for our audience, that's a bigger reason why I like doing this. Cause, for a non-believer that looks at the believer, um, they wonder why they'd ever want to be a believer. As sad as that is, I remember someone saying there's five gospels. There's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't read the other four, and
Mm,
I
that's
think,
good too.
yeah, it's just like, I mean, we gotta be changed in way. And by the way, the fact that so many people are against pornography shows that we are designed in a way to want, there's areas of us that have, we want bad, we do bad things, and we do that, and selfish intentions and all the ways this world is made. At the same time, there is good morals that people are made with that to do good. And it's a beautiful thing to have conversations with people. And we found in our approach, especially, I know on a podcast, us sharing this might seem like it can already put a wall up. But if you ever join us on our Tuesday clubhouses, I mean, it's an open format. It's just, let's talk about porn. And I've had the best clubhouse calls we've had are those that have came on, and they actually had questions about it. They might were defending porn,
Yeah.
wanting to defend porn more. And all I did was ask questions, stay curious, and didn't judge. And my focus with people sharing about this is there is no when they're here, we've already won by, and winning is a relative term of saying that I just want this person to feel heard. I want them to say,
Yeah.
man, I really enjoy these people. And from that, we've had one guy after want to get a personal call and ask me other questions about things that were faith related that he felt he couldn't have with other people in the church because it was so dogmatic of how they approach things. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think the church, there's a lot for them to learn about. I think 2012, a statistic came out where 50% of pastors watch pornography. And
Yeah.
that's pretty appalling. And if I was a pastor, and let's say more than 50% of my congregation was doing heroin, yes, I probably would have a message and something very direct to that topic, within scripture too. So it's funny where the pastor could look out and say, wow, literally half or more of my congregation could be right now struggling with pornography. And a lot of times people are afraid to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting. My pastor the other day was talking about how one of the, sort of criticisms of the church is that, we, or or criticisms of Christians is we will say that we believe one thing, but we act another way. And the reality is that's true because we're human, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, we can take that
All
same
of that.
criticism to parenting, to leadership, to all of those things. I run a team of people for work, and I often say we need to go do this thing, but I do something different because I'm human and I get tired or I get lazy or I get distracted. And same thing with parenting and all of that. And it's like, part of that is being able to recognize that it's a journey, that it's always a working towards, being better today than I was yesterday. Right. And I think that, like you mentioned, like the dogmatic piece of it, where it's like, well, you do this thing, so we can't even talk to you, or you're not welcome here. And it's like, well, wow, man, if we really flip the script, all of us are guilty of doing some of those things. And I think you won't find anyone who's really anti-pornography or working towards helping people understand the dangers of it that wasn't um, involved in it at one point, to varying degrees,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But I want to talk a little bit about, like, what are some of the bigger, reasons? What are some of the real dangers of pornography? And let's just say, because I think it's pretty dynamic. There's quite a few layers, right? But let's just kind of start with, like, with your relationship with your marriage, not necessarily you personally, but like if I came to you and I said, hey, I'm really struggling here and I'm thinking that this is damaging me. What are some of the areas that you feel like you can really back up with statistics or data that it is harmful for people?
I think stats are good, and we have them on our Instagram, and so obviously we feel that way. But I'll tell you, for relationships, if you really want to get a paradigm shift or understand a perspective, there are some Reddit forums, and by the way, there are also some really bad things on Reddit, so be very careful as you go there.
I would agree with that. Reddit can be extremely toxic.
There are, and by the way, with this, there's a lot of things that are triggering, but you know what? I mean, everything in this world triggers people today. There's a level of fear being like, man, it's scary to trigger people. And so we do want to say trigger warnings on things. Like we can
Yeah.
use terms and topics that could trigger people if you're listening. But what's not? I mean, that's another reason why I did this. We're seeing the movie Cuties come out on Netflix, which was literally promoting child pornography. The lead actress couldn't watch her own show. That's an issue. We see on Netflix, there was a show we watched where the character was posed as a young camp girl, yet she was a 25-year-old actress. So legally it's okay, but they're showing a naked girl and a sex scene of someone that's posed as like a 15 or 16-year-old. That the thematic element of pornography is what they're trying to do. That's why they're selling it. So relationally, again, you can take that to where it's going, and that was on Netflix. Um, so relationally, I'd say, yeah, on Reddit, there's some forums. I think Love After Porn's a great one. There's a few of them, and I think if it's maybe I don't want to say to look up porn, but there's a few really good ones.
Yeah.
And when you start reading how these are anonymous forums, so when women post how they really feel without feeling judged, it will break your heart. I mean, because let's say they really do see what their husband's watching, and And husbands are thinking, I'm just doing this habitually, compulsively. It's not about that. That's not how women,
Yeah.
that's not how our wives feel. That's not how our spouses feel. They see,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, he's wanting this kind of person. That's not even me. I shared that example with someone recently, and she said, it's crazy you said that because I knew something was weird with my friend because her skin was really dark. And later I found out that it's because her husband was watching porn. He was a husband, a Christian man, Christian family, many kids. And um, she said that he was watching porn of darker skinned women. And I mean,
Wow.
that, like, if that doesn't just scream out that, and that's the sad part is like, we want people to be okay with this issue, yet it's killing the people we love most, closest to us. Um, it's pretty crazy to see.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to me because I think a lot of men don't recognize, and it's not just a male problem. There's a lot of females that
Yeah.
watch pornography also. And
Yeah.
so there's like kind of two things that are coming to my mind right now. One of them is that I think a lot of men try to justify, well, biologically we're different. And, there's a lot of books that you can read that will help sort of break down how, men are biologically meant to have, you know, hundreds of children, right? Like there's not that we're designed that way, but there's a lot of science behind the biology of women and how different it is than the biology of men, right? And there's a really great book called Why Beautiful People Have More Daughters, and it talks about sort of the anthropology of the human biology without really getting into like the emotional connectivity of it all. Um, and it's really fascinating. But I think that we've sort of, if I can say, bastardized that reality as a justification for being unemotional and for having men who participate in pornography sort of ignoring how it impacts our partners or ignoring how it impacts our brains, right? Because it's such an unrealistic viewpoint, and we start to kind of believe our own hype, right? We start to expect that in the bedroom from our wife. We start to think that those things are normal when they're not. And it's like, you, to your point, you can go on Reddit or any number of places and find studies upon study about how pornography triggers dopamine and the different chemical responses in your brain in a very similar way to like cocaine or heroin, and how we can become dependent on that escape and those chemical imbalances, where, I mean, almost to the point where you would rather just go watch porn than actually be with your spouse or your partner, right?
Yeah,
Like,
there's always noticeable, lack of communication, disconnect, feel very disconnected. Um, if you watch The Social Dilemma
mhm,
and you just don't think for your head once, man, they could replace Facebook with Pornhub, and how scary would that be? That's true. And
yeah,
that's what they're doing. They have the money to hire the exact talent of artificial intelligence. They want you on it longer and longer. They don't want you
yeah,
to have more love with your wife. They want you to have more love with the phone and with the screen. And yeah, the science behind it. I mean, there's neuroplasticity where our minds are plastic, not elastic. When we do something, the neural pathways, it's like a stream that becomes a roaring river. The water is the brain waves are going to keep going that direction, keep going that direction, and it literally imprints in your brain to want to go there. So it is an
yeah,
addiction. And I would say, I would have to say that I believe I was addicted to say that it's actually easy to break, because I don't want people to think that I'm making light of it. But once you decide differently, you want to take that stand. I guess like once your brain and heart connect, you really want to be against it. And when typically I see people struggle or falter, it's typically when they're not as healthy in those areas. Meaning a lot of people that have trouble sleeping, a lot of gamers that are on the screens a lot, playing video games, are up real late. They have, I can't really say there's a study on it, but there has been shown a lot of guys that have, or guys and girls, it could lead to that.
yeah,
So yes, and when you start thinking of just the themes and what are being seen, um, It's not, it would affect you. I would challenge someone to say, let's imagine a teacher is watching thematic teacher based pornography, teacher and student or whatever, schoolgirl. And that teacher goes to school the next day. Do you really think that he's never thinking once sexually about the kids that he needs to lead and is stewarded with? And
Yeah.
I think it would be a great challenge to somehow have a zero tolerance porn rule for teachers and say, yeah, no, like we're not just talking about your work computer. We're talking about when you're at home. What
Yeah.
you do at home is going to affect how you are here to
Yeah.
steward our kids. And if you're going to be sexualizing after our children, that's an issue. So that's why when you see these cases happen, where did the idea come from? It didn't come from pure good. It came from evil. It came from
Yeah.
pornography. It came from the enemy.
Yeah. One of the things that's really tricky about those things is like we live in a country where liberty is so, you know, appreciated and honored and put on this pedestal. And I'm as a libertarian, I mean, I'm very much like when in doubt, err on the side of liberty. And this is one of a very few areas where it's like, man, I don't know how to apply the non-aggression principle of a libertarian mindset to, the idea of pornography, because they're symbiotic, right? Like when we talk about pornography and how it fuels trafficking and all those things, we're talking about like a physical response that typically is always, not always, is typically over time having to be increased to get the same desired result, right? Like we start out watching like softcore Cinemax when we're teenagers, right? Or you hear about, guys in the 60s were flipping through the Sears catalog because that was all that they get their hands on. But that was enough to stimulate them. And then it becomes something else. And then it's HBO. And then it's, you know, Pornhub or whatever it is, and it grows and grows and grows. And then all of a sudden we find out that there's, generally, you know, good, ethical, moral human beings who have thousands of child images on their computer. And it's like, well, how did they get there? Right. And it's because somewhere along that arc, they never spoke about having an issue, and they didn't think it was that big of a deal. And we've all seen the Dateline guy, whatever his name, he used to do the sting operations, right? And it's like, well, I wasn't going to really do anything, but they don't know.
And
It's
I kind of want to lean in for a second before we get too separated on this, meaning sometimes, like when you put an example of a guy who has child pornography downloaded on his computer, he downloaded that through mainstream pornography. It's not this myth of we're living in this, they have some access to some dark web for some stuff. By the way, I'm sure those places exist, for sure. And those places are known through messaging apps and things like that. And so a lot of the anti-porn movements really want to hold things accountable. I mean, we do some research on child sexual abuse material, and it's tough, and even on Amazon they're selling
Mhm. Yeah.
photography children of 13-year-old, the cover of it was a naked 13, and God, there's no sexual attention that I would have to that, but for a man to see that and have a sexual lust for that, and I read the comments of the people that are commenting about this book, and they wanted it more. They wanted
Yeah.
like one picture, like the kid's just in a room and blah blah blah. They wish there was more torture. They wish there was more abuse. And it was like, I remember that night, I was like, baby, it was a little dark. I need a little prayer and just,
Yeah.
I mean, it's, so, and then when we think about pornography, and not only just how it fuels trafficking, there's trafficking in pornography, and that's
Mhm.
where I don't know if there's a oops mistake do over. As much as I love forgiveness and I love freedom and liberty in our country, you can't you can't still be around if you have aided and abetted the trafficking of children, the exploitation. 14-year-olds are getting raped, and then their videos are uploaded on their site and then downloaded hundreds of thousands of times. There was
Yeah.
a picture I posted that won it was an art contest by Exodus Cry, and it's this girl's picture and all the comments of what the guys said about her video of her rape, and it was sick. It really wakes you up, and I say that, and as if you're listening to this and thinking about it, like that's what's on there, and not to be
Yeah.
cognitively dissident about it. I don't know. I might have seen something like, I mean, I could have seen things like that.
Yeah.
We want to attack all the gray areas. Someone could then argue, well, what about the people that choose to do porn? There's a lot of stuff we could go there, but there's
Yeah.
just sometimes just going right to the black and white. They literally have 14-year-olds that are trafficked, raped, even younger. They have 10-year-olds on there.
Yeah. This is where, and then this is where this is that gray area that I struggle with, because I'm not a big fan of like banning X, Y, or Z with consenting adults, right? Like sexual interaction amongst adults is fine. And the reality is that I'm in that same camp though, that like once it crosses, like we talk about, so and so had sex with a minor, and it's like, no, so and so raped a child. There's a difference. Like when we say sex with a minor, it just makes it sound softer and less, you know, bad.
It traps that kid.
But
I mean, they then got to sell the kid that, oh, well, you wanted it, or else you wanted to. That's
yeah,
sick. That will try to crush that kid's psyche from the beginning.
yeah, yeah, and it's really really hard. I mean, and so and then you see organizations like Pornhub who have had to go through ridiculous amounts of court battles to because they've had 14-year-old, 15-year-old victims come out as adults and say, this is a video that's on your website that's of me. I'm 14 in this video, and it was not consensual, and they didn't take it down. And it wasn't until, Visa, MasterCard, American Express all decided, hey, we're not going to process your credit card payments anymore, that they decided to figure it out. Right. And I was blown away when that story broke, because one of the things that MindGeek, who's the owner of Pornhub, said was, if you knew how many videos we had posted every day that we have to go through to try to figure out what's legitimate and what's not, they're like, it's physically impossible for us to do that. And it was like, wait a minute, that's saying that there's so much content.
Did you see the one of our recent Instagram posts about how many moderators they had on staff?
I didn't know.
Uh, so Facebook has 20,000, YouTube has 15,000 or 10 or 15,000. Pornhub at 20. My graphic designer sent back 20,000 thinking I made a typo. No, they had 20. They had,
Wow.
our hands put up together. That's how many moderators they had to moderate more videos upload on there than YouTube.
Than YouTube. Yeah. And YouTube's something like 1,000 a minute or something. Like it's some ridiculous number.
And these are the moderators on Facebook and YouTube are moderating for these kind of videos.
Yeah. Yeah. It's insane how easily accessible like really dark content can be. And like, I worked with a anti-trafficking organization for a long time, and I I would only be able to do so much for so long before I would have to physically take a break,
Yeah.
because mentally, I have 8 children from 23 to 3. So from 13 and under, I have 6 kids. So anything that I would read or engage in or start to work on, I would see one of my own kids, because I have a 3-year-old, I have a 5-year-old, I have a 9-year-old, I have an 11-year-old. And it was like, I can't share this information without picturing my own child. And there's this quote that I've lived by for years that says, there are 2 main conditions in life. You have the opportunity, you have, I'm totally butchering this, 2 primary conditions in life: to accept things the way that they are, or to accept the responsibility for changing them. And there's so much in this world that I can let slide. But when it comes to like this particular area of child sex trafficking, like it's not something that I could accept. So we had to get involved in helping to try to change it. And in so much of the research that we did and so much of the boots on the ground work that we did, what I saw was that pornography was always a part of the story.
Yeah.
In every conversation, pornography led some American sex tourist to get involved, or the reason somebody was acting as a trafficker is because there was money to be made by some American, right? Like we're the number one consumers of child rape videos in the world. And it wasn't something that I could just ignore. And so for me, it's, I'm grateful for your organization. I'm grateful that you guys are doing the work that you're doing, because we need more organizations like this, and we need more people that are willing to speak out about it. And I know you guys do some great work. So I'd love for you to share, before we're out of time, kind of how people can get involved, what they can do to support you guys. Maybe somebody's listening to this going, hey, I didn't realize all this was part of, my Saturday night, whatever, and is starting to think that maybe they should make some changes. Like, where would they start?
Yeah, that's a great question. Not a question, but it's a great opportunity to share just a little bit more clearly on what we're doing. And it's easy to see the Instagram, and it's easy to see what we're posting because we want to raise awareness, but we're not necessarily fighting. Exodus Cry really is taking to Pornhub, and they were leading this legislative battle. That's not where we are. I like one-on-one Zoom calls with guys. I like getting them into getting them with a group of other guys, and we want to end pornography one heart at a time. Um, and that seems kind of crazy because with the amount of consumption of it, but one person that changes from it, that sees, that tastes the orange, so to say, that really experiences what it's like to exactly how I felt when I was addicted to pornography, to then just having clear eyes and seeing people as people, like seeing God's children as children, seeing my wife as this amazing woman. Like it's the paradox of the fact that women's empowerment is not them being more vulgar and like you're saying, wearing the tighter dresses and being more sexualized. Women should be honored and glorified, and in a way that is honoring, the world and our God, I'd say. So
Yeah. I love that you mentioned the women empowerment piece, though, because I feel like, I have 6 daughters, man, and I want them to be empowered, and I want them to use their voice, and I want them to feel strong. And sometimes I feel like that movement is not presented in a way that's actually empowering them. Like
yeah,
there is, it's such this, like, dynamic of, like, you can be strong and beautiful and not overly sexualized, because then, like, I almost feel like you're not even really using your power. You're just giving men what you think they really want, when
and maybe pornography's create that because you don't really know that, like when you meet your wife, like it's just more than just the physical beauty. I mean, it's just everything about her character, everything about who she is, how she sees herself. I mean, there
yeah,
can be really a beautiful change. The biggest gift I've been given from True Radical Love was thinking that we're gonna get all these men to be real men and stand against porn, which is so great to see. But honestly, it's to see how women will respond. See women to say, finally, like when I was wearing the shirt, they'd always like point to it. I love your shirt. Like most people don't want everybody doesn't want their spouse watching porn. I
yeah,
would, and then that's where, like, I like making radical statements where we could then just be curious about it, because who really wants that, and yeah, it's not empowering them. And so yeah, to bring it, again, to bring it back, it's we're just really open, really curious, which is kind of, some people might find that interesting. Like, well, no, we're like super open. Like we want guys to be able to share. Like when we get together, I do not want people to hop on a Zoom call with me for an hour and me to talk like we're on a podcast. That's why I go on podcasts, because I like to
yeah,
talk. I get out of my system. And when they come to a Zoom call, I just want to hear them talk. I just want to hear them meet someone new. So we do a lot of breakout rooms where, it's not just and we could scale that. The first 5 minutes we typically get in a breakout room, put someone with someone new, and that's scalable. If we have 500
yeah.
people, we'll create 250 breakout rooms. And so right away, every single person is just shared. And by the way, don't go right to the most difficult question. It's more of
Sure.
a just
Yeah.
empowering direction. But
It's relationship building. You gotta
yeah,
ease into that. You gotta create trust and all those things, for sure.
yeah. So we did realize that it might help to take someone from anonymously having this issue or struggle to then go to a group Zoom, we like to bridge that gap. Someone can hop on a call with myself, with Donald, with if you're a woman, you could be on a call with my wife, and then learn about it. We don't have a women's community yet. We're just starting out. That being shared, is that there's a lot of things we're going to do, and we obviously, as any successful nonprofit, you have to be focused on a specific thing. And we have the groups that we want to track, the men's group, and we want to have a expansive volunteer base. I believe that God's made us with gifts, and whatever we could see done in our platform, we want to see it through our people. So we could see having 20, 30, 40 volunteers that all have different gifts and different areas that we could be in. And we really want our nonprofit to be the people's nonprofit, because we found that when people stand against pornography, they want to run their own nonprofit. And that's like Kayla and I. So we'd say, hey, come here, volunteer here. Because when you start fighting for others, we start wanting to help other people, it just only helps your battle more. Like, it only helps you more. Like, I run this, my wife and I started this selfishly, yes, maybe it's accountability, maybe it's something there, but it's just the being around it in this type of way just keeps my heart even more grounded.
Yeah, that's awesome. I found one of the best ways to just like being of service is just such a gift, and the more that I do it, the more that I want to do it more. Like, it's all that I want to do. Right. I mean, and I'm curious, like, do you find that you're attracting men to your group? Because like when I started this podcast and I really wanted to focus on helping men to become vulnerable, I have found that for myself, overcoming alcoholism, not smoking, stopping pornography, the things that I've found in my life that were unhealthy and that I've said, okay, I'm not doing this anymore, have always taken a really vulnerable moment of admitting how broken I am, or admitting how, like, I need help. I can't do this on my own. And so in the 10 or 15 years that I've been doing that work, I've found that now the second I think that I got an issue, I lean into it right away. Like, I'm very, very resistant to, or it's very outside of my character anymore to like sit back and wait and procrastinate when it comes to like working through my stuff, because I've found that I'm always better on the other side. So I started this podcast with the intention of helping other men discover what that looks like. Right. But what I found is that the majority of my fan base is female, because they want their husbands to be this way. Like, they're trying to work their way towards getting them there.
Funny, yeah.
So I'm curious, like, as you guys are doing this, are you finding that like men are coming to you, or like wives kind of pushing them towards you, or like what is that? How's that working for you guys as far as like getting out to your target market? And is that mostly through Instagram?
Yeah, well, yeah, the Instagram, we definitely have a more female audience that probably follows us back, comments more. But there are a lot of guys that do, and right now it's really word of mouth, and the money that's donated, we will spend further our audience. So it could be through advertising, it could be through having people post about it, but we do rely on people sharing the story, people seeing it. Hopefully they see one factor, one testimony. It's just like, man, people need to see this, and then they can see more of that. But really, the Instagram is it's really just to like catch the eye, catch the interest. But where the real magic happens is the community that we're forming. So we are actively seeking men to be a part of it, and again, typically they find us.
That's awesome.
It's us having to find them, but we do go out on. Sanford does a lot of recruiting on Reddit forums of guys that are succeeding. I mean, I'll say we are for. You gotta know who you're for and who you're not for. We're really not for the one that's overly defending pornography. They're not there yet. I mean, and I would love to always want to call with someone and help them. But if I would just say our audience are definitely people that struggle with porn. They know it's not good. They struggle with it, and they need community. We are a little different where I'll say most anti-pornography forums, at least online, they're big. are a lot of self-help programs. And it's hard to do this on your own.
Yeah.
And you know what? You could do this on your own and get to 60 days, 90 days. And it's sad when you see sometimes these guys fall. And if they had a community that said, you know what, it's okay, I bet they keep going. But instead, sometimes when they fall hard and think they can't get past it.
Yeah.
So I always encourage people, there's a level of pride that can help. You should have a pride for yourself that you are better than us. Like, seriously, like, guys, like, you can beat this. This is not impossible, because I've seen so many stories of people that have beaten that. You can be that story too. And oh, there was a flip side to that. That I totally was, struggling with it. Okay. And then, oh man, don't edit this, just so people know how authentic and real I lost. I had this Amazon package come in and thought went somewhere else. So, yes, but in general, if you do fall, it's good to have the community of people and sometimes we fall in different ways. Hey, I totally checked out a girl or something. Like, I totally looked at someone with different intentions. And like, that's how radical we are. We're not just about, we're just not about helping people get away from porn so they could then start looking at Instagram models. Like, that's not our mission.
Right. You don't replace one with the other, right? Like, that's not the idea. For sure. I get it, man. I think it's a really good place to kind of bring it to a close, is the importance of the community of it, the importance of having people. And I think for me, it's always been an accountability factor of not being quiet or not keeping the things that I'm working through, like, to myself, and speaking it out, like, and giving people permission to be a part of that journey with you. Like, everything that I've had to try to overcome that was a personal demon of mine, it's always been because I went to my wife and I said, I'm struggling with this, I need help. And I've talked to my friends and my community, and I've given people permission to, like, hold me accountable, and in some cases that's been my kids. In some cases it's been my partner. In some cases it's been coaches or mentors, but I think that community piece is so vital, because you're right, we can't really do it on our own. And it's not enough to just follow people on Instagram. You got to like take some action. You got to do some work.
Yeah. Blow me up. I'm not at the point where I can't meet with people. And like, we do believe in collective wisdom, that I don't believe that they need us to get past it. They don't need the sage on the stage. They need a guide on the side. And that's, I mean, people, like, they exactly know what to do. In fact, what they don't want to do is what they got to do. Like, meaning, some of my friends that they tell their wife every time they falter, which is, it's amazing. And then sometimes when they're winning, I'm like, are you telling your wife you're winning? They're like, no. Why? Why wouldn't you now? Oh, it's more pressure? Good. It's like, don't you not want it? Like, that's if you don't want it, you gotta actually hate it. So study it. Like, that's why it's like, I have to be disgusted with porn so much that I cannot want this in my body at all. Like, when you watch like one of those McDonald's documentaries, not to call it McDonald's, but you see like what the beast man, all that stuff. Like, once you really know, you're like, dude, it's not as tasty as it was before. So people got to know, like, and again, other great resources. Again, we just want to be a megaphone for others. That's why we want to be on their podcast. We want to share their stories. But Fight the New Drug is an amazing company in Utah. Is probably the biggest part of my journey when I was getting away from pornography. Exodus Crying is an amazing company. And my friend Daryl Mead has the Reward Foundation. My friend Emily Gaudreau, she does How to Raise a Maverick, which is really family and parenting based. She is phenomenal with that content. So there are a lot of nonprofits in our space, but we still need more, and we're still so abundant in helping each other. So there is a niche in each area. So definitely find them out, check them out. And then I would say our niche is to build a community, to have these guys get together. So again, Keith, thank you for having me on here. And I hope maybe, I don't know if your direction is having a community or things like that, but if you ever need guest talk or just someone to open the room, I'd love to. But yeah, as we get ideas and as you think, and we feel there's something needed there, something people need to hear. So again, if you're listening to this podcast, let us know what you want to hear. I would be shocked if this hasn't created some level of questions or thoughts. And we love to hear them. And maybe that stirs what thoughts could become from after this. So
Yeah.
again, thank you, Keith. And
Awesome, man.
yeah, look forward to it.
Yeah. Cool. Appreciate you, brother.